Time has come once again to speak as witches and wizards do. I'm Daniel Dubois,
And I'm Michaela Gaffinstone.
and we're your hosts for the Think Like a Wizard podcast. Welcome to season 4, episode 9, Tulpas. Now,
Juicy subject.
yeah. Yeah, actually, because I was listening to see if anyone else had done any things on tulpas before. Like, well, obviously people would have done something, but a lot of people consider it a controversial topic. And,
Well,
kind of like, go ahead.
it is, but it crosses over from, it's in Buddhism.
Right.
That's a place where you find it. A place, please note. Um, it's also considered a psychological phenomenon. So it's been studied by science as well as comes from a more spiritual place. So it's one of those areas where I think it kind of shapeshifts. It depends on who's looking at tulpas. But there's modern day version of working with tulpas is tulpamancy,
Hmm.
which is, think necromancy and any of the other mancies, but
Right.
it is a really interesting topic, and I'm looking forward to hearing your take on it. But for those that haven't come across tulpas before, this is very basically it is an emanation or a product, a visualization, a manifestation, if you will, of something that you really focus on and you wish to create. And so you keep focusing on it and focusing on it, and it will arrive and it kind of works with you if you're lucky. And it will work against you, um, depending. Like this is a journey, right? It's not single event, but typically you kind of cohabit the space with your body, which is why it becomes a psychological event, something that psychologists like to study, and you can cooperate together and make different things happen. So you can also uncreate a tulpa, but
Yes.
it's a big process, and as always, I advise caution, not don't do it, but just tread carefully.
Yeah. Well, I was
And
going to actually,
over
I
to
was
you.
thinking of actually starting off by saying, tulpas, don't do them. End of episode.
Well, that would be the short version, yeah.
Yes.
But I don't like to tell anybody they can't do something.
Right. Well, exactly, right? Because I thought, well, if the reason this topic is up there, it's because it's necessary. So, as much as that would have amused me to do an episode like that, we're not going to do that. So, yeah, for people who, I mean, Michaela gave an explanation, and to make it to give an even more banal explanation for people not familiar with them, it is the we'll call it the enhanced version of an imaginary friend.
Oh, I like that. Yes, I like that.
Yeah, because basically, right, well, I'll say this. The reason why I would have said just don't do them end of episode is because this is something usually, right, a master would do. And a master would use this either as like well, because you're making a construct, for those of you not familiar with that term, a construction, something you're constructing, would be a construct out of your own, well, spiritual and psychological design, right? So you'd make another
Uh-huh.
entity basically that's a part of you and would act as a substitute for you, especially if you're communicating with other people who already know how to communicate with spirits. Then you can just kind of send like this is your ambassador, your avatar, if you will, is one way of looking at it that you can send out there. But it is a part of you. And one of the reasons why I say don't just don't make them is because it's a part of you, but it's not the conscious part of you. It's everything that you've imbued into it about yourself. Because they do take a long time to make. You can't just make them in one day unless you have
Oh
like
no, it
some kind
takes
of
a lot of
super
focus.
obsession going on.
No, it takes a lot of focus and effort, and you really have to be engaged in creating that. But something that just leapt to mind was for the people who maybe have gone a little more advanced. Lilith created Samael, and you could say Samael was a tulpa, and he embodied all of her rage and her distress and her need for vengeance and all of the dark side of Lilith was put into the creation of Samael. So he was unrelenting, is unrelenting, and very
Mhm.
much embodies all those characteristics that Lilith had in her that went into the creation of Samael. So if you know the story of Lilith and Samael, then that will make sense to you. And if you don't know it, it's a very cool story and one you might want to know about before you start dealing with Lilith, if you haven't yet. So that's something to consider as well, right? She had a lot of work to do once she'd created Samael. It was that unleashed all kinds of doom, gloom, and disaster. So, be careful what you create.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Over the years, I've read stories. I mean, like, there is famously in modern times, the Philip Project is considered to be a modern day Tulpa story. I don't know if you've heard of the Philip story. It was in the 70s. A
I
group,
have
I think it was
not.
actually in Canada. I think it was a Canadian a group that did it. They wanted to see if they could make their own ghost. Because they want to know, right? Part of the scientific research done on tulpas, this was part of it. It was the is it purely a construct of the mind? Like, is talking to ghosts and having sounds purely a construct of the mind, or is it something else? So they made their own ghost, and they gave it like some qualities that were contradictory. That trying to remember the explanation of that one. The point is, they made their own ghost, and what ended up happening is it reportedly took on a life of its own.
Yes, they do. Tulpas do.
Yeah. And so
Like,
there was a horror movie made off of this experiment, actually. I don't remember what the name of the movie is.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just like the story of Lilith and Samael, he was not reliant upon, being in her presence or anything.
Mhm.
So if you're advanced enough to get that far where this being is then doesn't need to cohabit with you in your body but can be separate from you, then you got a whole other thing going on. And Samael went off to cause Cain to kill Abel and all kinds of things. there
Mhm.
was there was a lot going on there. um it interweaves with the biblical myths very well. So hey, happy Easter.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? Because it can function without you, but it's still a part of you. So it's still using part of your processing power and it's still using your energy. So what you have is basically essentially what is I don't want to say an automaton, but what you have is another part of you running around, sharing your resources and your brain processing power. That's why it's
And what
important
it
to be, go ahead.
and what it does is connected to you, so it comes back to
Yeah.
you. So if you fling a pile of you know what at the fan, it's going to come back to you. You're going to get covered
Yeah.
in it. And that's kind of you have a tulpa that goes off doing things, whatever that is, for good or for otherwise, it comes back to you. So careful.
Right. So the reason why I would advise being a master is because you make it, you use it for what you want to use it for, and then you send it, then you deconstruct it or reabsorb it, however you want to look at it. But if you're not, well, basically, if you're not healthy in your mind and you do end up making a tulpa, what you have is an unhealthy entity running around also. And
Right.
that,
And honestly, I think these times, none of us are in a stable enough state right now to be creating tulpas. And I don't care what country you're in. Australia is suffering from an insane amount of domestic violence that's unprecedented. I mean, there's always been an issue there, but it's off the charts right now. China are trying to dismantle Tibet. We've got, Canada, I'm afraid for your elections. We've got the US, I don't even need to say anything. What's going on here? All the countries that you can think of have got their issues coming up, and people are stressed. Their mental health resources are pulled. So now is not the time for tulpas.
But, and this is to my understanding, is this is the time when tulpas are most likely to show up.
Mm. Well, the veil is thin, right? It's easy.
Yeah. So hence why the importance of this episode is that you may unwittingly create a tulpa in your fear, in your panic, in your obsession over something.
Mm.
The atmosphere is rife for creating tulpas. Tulpas, yeah. So
Mm.
that's part of why the episode exists, is to kind of give you that, warn you, to kind of advise you on really paying attention to yourself and how you're feeling and what you're doing, especially for those of you awakening, obviously, because you're going to have a lot of energy. You're going to be awakening to things, and there's going to be a temptation, even if a subconscious one, to put some emotions aside and over a long period of time unintentionally create a tulpa that's loaded with those emotions.
Yeah. And that's what Lilith did. Not over so much time, but time is different in Lilith's case.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you take society nowadays is very fond of, let's just get rid of that negative emotion. We'll sit on it. We'll, you know, a- do affirmations to get rid of it. All this kind of
Mm-hmm.
nonsense. Those don't work, by the way. Not create something. They simply affirm its existence already. So people kind of misuse those. But if you are trying to hide, to detach from the negative experiences that you're having, that is exactly the material that your tool will be made from. And you don't want that running around because it's going to keep coming and slapping you in the face. Like
Right.
you don't want to go there. So, this is a realm where you've got to be very careful, mindful of your steps and what you're going to work with and what comes out of your mouth. Because when you know about the power of words,
Mm-hmm.
it gives it more power. It kind of self-perpetuates. So you need to be careful with that. And I'm glad that you brought this up, Danielle, because it was you that chose the topic. As it
Right.
usually is, by the way, folks. I don't determine the topics. I just go with the flow. Because that's my style.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Right.
Danielle's podcast after all. But this is a great topic because this is exactly the time people will create those from all the negative things that you don't want to feel. I'll shove it off over there. I'll give it a seat, right? I'll tell it to sit down over there. You keep doing that, you're going to be creating something pretty feisty and maybe difficult to handle, you
Right.
know?
Well, you kind of gave me an aside. You kind of said something that gave me an aside, that the producers of the show, which actually this week is a number of gods who work with the metaphor of magic, with the of magic gods. So you got Hecate, absolutely. Lilith is not in this episode, as far as I know, but there are several other gods who wish to remain nameless, who are also the gods of magic or goddesses of magic of their pantheons. So who are here, who want this episode. And one of the things that you set off, if words are spells, what are songs?
Plantations. Yeah.
Because singing is much more powerful than speaking. And we are a musical species, even if we're not all awesome at it. We respond to
Mhm.
music, we sing along a lot of times unintentionally, even if just in our minds. We sing along with a song that's on. We can't go to concerts without singing. We can't sit around watching a music video without at least partially singing in our heads or singing to ourselves. That's how ingrained it
Mhm.
is. And before there was radio and available media, people sang at work. People would make up work songs.
Absolutely. And music has vibration. And we all know that vibration makes every difference to, well, life, right? If you drop a pebble in a pond and watch the ripples go, you've got the vibrations going through.
Hmm.
But there's tons of experiments with sound and using sound to make shapes in sand and this kind of thing, and
Hmm.
make shapes with water as it freezes. Um, and yeah, sound is huge. In fact, I know somebody that works with tuning forks, and she changes people's auras to a more healthy resonance using tuning forks. And
Right.
it
Well, we
sounds
discussed it when we had Tina on.
and it sounds woo, but yeah, like it's not woo, it works.
Right.
So the vibration of singing takes
Hmm.
your words to a whole new level.
Yeah. The idea of spell singers was kind of part of they wanted to add to this episode. I remember years ago coming across the idea, and I don't know if it was in Finland, a Finland story, but one of the more greater magicians of Finland folklore and mythology was a spell singer. And a lot of his battles with supernatural creatures were song battles.
Hmm. Think of it biblically, think of the Song of
Mm.
Solomon.
Yes.
That's pretty powerful,
Yeah. Or even what happened in Jericho.
right?
Do you sound to raise the walls? Yeah. Like, and what I'll offer is that related to tulpas, if you ever have an issue with tulpas that you've created or a tulpa visitation from someone else, singing. If you're
Hmm.
ever wondering how to protect yourself or how to counter singing or using your voice in a song-like fashion.
Yeah. This is good. I'm glad this came up.
Hmm.
Hmm. You're giving me some ideas for the, the next
Well,
casting.
yeah, singing has been it's been sitting in the wings waiting to be brought onto the show for a while. There was just
Hmm.
no I guess according to the producers of each episode, there was no time yet to bring it in. But this one I was told would come in on this episode on top of the tulpas because we're not going to
You know,
like give instructions
yeah,
on how
we're
to
not.
make a tulpa, but what's that?
Well, I think we already did actually. It gave as much
Yeah.
instruction as you kind of need. So yeah, there is that. But
Mm.
singing, you've got my mind going along the
Mhm.
various religions that I've looked
Yeah.
at because I've mentioned before that I've studied comparative religions, and I think you
Mm.
have as well. That's a
I
funny
have,
thing
yeah.
with people in the spiritual world. We often do,
Hmm.
right? Um, but some either sects or entire religion will ban music. They ban singing from their religious environments.
Hmm.
And I know in Orthodox Judaism, or at least ultra Orthodox, like we are talking the equivalent of fundamentalist
Hmm.
Christians, right? And they may
Right.
be the same, I don't know. But you cannot have an ultra Orthodox man listen to a woman's voice singing because it's considered to do all kinds of dangerous things to you. Um, and other people like it for the same reason, right? And then you have the siren song.
Yeah.
Sirens are typically depicted as female singing, lulling
Yeah.
you to your death in the depths of the waters. So there's a lot of story about women's voices and songs.
Yeah. I was going to say, as a straight male, I can attest to the power of women singing and its ability to lead you astray. Definitely.
Okay. Okay, there you go. And I would offer a different kind of singing that I think is really powerful. And if you haven't heard any, find it on YouTube and listen to Tibetan throat singing
Mm.
because whoa, that stuff resonates, that goes straight through your body. Or if you can find Tibetan monks chanting, and I say particularly Tibetan because they have this ability to go really low, like the voice
Right.
is deep and it comes out differently because it's the from the throat. You'll just have to hear it to know what I mean. But that stuff vibrates through you the same way a singing bowl does, or a tuning fork would, and it's very powerful. And that's typically male voices. So it's not that it's only women that can have an impact, but
Right.
women are usually put on the side of, yes, well, it's bad when you do it, you know? And this is the whole patriarchy bullshit that we've been putting up
Yeah.
with for centuries, um, millennia even. So yeah, singing, love it.
Yeah, well, I
Thank you for
mean,
bringing that up.
yeah, because if we're introducing something powerful like a tulpa, I think the idea is, well, here's a powerful countermeasure at the
Mm.
same time. And like not just countermeasure, right? Like if you sing your spells, there's that much more energy into it. You're giving out that much more energy. So, I mean, something to consider singing your spells. But like even, you yourself don't have, well, do you? We'll put a pin in that one. Using someone else's singing versus your own. But we'll put a pin in that one for now. That's what I'm getting.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, I would put a pin in that one. I just want to throw in the mix too that there is, a neurodiverse situation, should we say,
Mhm.
where the wiring is a little bit different and the person has synesthesia. And this
Right.
is basically a cross wiring of senses. And what can happen is somebody, when they hear music, they get a color.
Right.
And sometimes the colors don't work well together. And other times you get this amazing rainbow and beautiful symphony of colors, quite literally. And it's very interesting to talk to somebody with that kind of synesthesia, if you can find them. I happen to know someone.
Yeah.
Um, but it's very interesting to talk to them because certain sounds will cause pain for them. Not
Yes.
many, but there are certain ones. And then others are just, they have different colors for them. So
Hmm.
really interesting. That being the case, and that being the case for more than one person, right? There is a small percentage of people that have the similar experiences. That again tells you that there is something more solid to music than we tend to think,
Hmm. Well, I mean, like a lot of rituals are singing. The ones that aren't banned. Like, I mean, I grew up with the church having a lot of singing.
right? Hymns. What are
Yeah,
hymns?
exactly.
Those are sung prayers, which is sung spells. It's the same thing.
Yep. So, and you know what? We're moving into something I've been also loath to talk about, but this is part of my practice. When I did my work invisibly for people, when I worked invisibly for people, and it involves a tulpa-like entity. I didn't create the tulpa-like entity because I'll put this out there. I might discuss that I was taught by a trickster, but it's also accurate to say I was conditioned by a trickster. But part of learning is is conditioning. You condition yourself to do
Yes.
that skill. So I don't want to make it sound more insidious than it is. So I'm very good at being a channel for spiritual energy, spiritual magical energy, because that's what I was taught. But one of the things I was taught, one could argue, is how to make a tulpa. But I was never completely taught that. But I was taught the concepts because that's okay. So this is where it gets kind of deep. So part of making a tulpa, this particular technique, is you take from yourself like you would a tulpa, but you add something from someone else into it. So what you have is a hybrid of two people. And what it does is it creates a connection and it gives you actually an avatar for the person you're communicating with, or that in my case that I was doing work with. So I had a tulpa that would act as again, an avatar or an ambassador for that person. Now, it's not something you force on someone, but consent in the spirit world, you also have a spirit, which also views the world different than your material self does. And you have the spirits that work with you who agree to this. But people who do not understand tulpas and do not understand magical practices are not usually keen to find out that happened, which is why I'm usually
Mm.
loath to talk about it. Because I'll get, oh, you know me better than anyone else. Yes, I do. I'm not going to tell you why I
Right.
know you better than anyone else, but a lot of times just because I listen, right? Part of helping people is listening to them. But then I also have the advantage of a Tulpa-like entity made from part of them. This is not something I always
Mm.
understood. Okay. In fact, I've only come to understand it maybe a decade or two ago. Not like the whole time I was learning how to do these things or even working invisibly. It's really just with the last person I worked with invisibly that I really figured it out and understood it. And I actually told them about it, but they were excited about it. But when I kind of started getting on the idea, and I would say, "Oh, there's this weird connection," because I didn't understand it, and they would like, it wouldn't excite them as much as you might think they would, right? To know that you're connected to them in some way and you know things about them that they wouldn't tell people, but they don't grasp the idea that technically they're telling you willingly. They just not consciously telling you willingly. So it's usually something I just
Mm.
don't talk about and I keep it to myself and I don't bother mentioning it. But on their end, even though they don't have the understanding of it or the conscious even awareness of it, people have said to me, "Oh, I feel like you're here in spirit." Yes, because you also have that version. Because it's not a one-way creation; it's a two-way. Because the person also I'm working with gets their own version. They get a version with information from me, a tulpa that they have for themselves. But most people don't know how to use it or don't even have an awareness of it. So they just usually think, "Well, I kind of felt you were around." And usually that's
Mm.
usually the most aware people, except for the last person I worked with, which was my twin flame. She was fully aware of it, so we would swap notes. But it's one of those things where, as you might imagine, I don't like telling people about. But but it's a different kind
Well,
of tulpa.
some things are sort of not for public consumption per se,
Right.
and then other things can be more so. But I think, if the listener is struggling with that a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
take a step back and just think of someone somewhere that you kind of know when you need to call them, or
Right.
they know to call you, right? You have this connection that just keeps you in touch. Like I have a long time friend of mine who's, I guess she's on an elevated friend level, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
but she's in New Zealand. I'm in the US, and we have met up and lived next to each other and all kinds of things in all different countries around the world. It's a very interesting journey that we've both been on, but we tend to be parallel. And every now
Mm-hmm.
and then those parallel lines kind of bump and then they separate out into parallel again, but we're always connected. And so if one of us is having issues, the other one simply knows to connect and be there for that person and help out. Even at that kind of distance, distance means nothing. The time zones mean nothing. The
Right.
connection is there. So if you have something like that or even close to that, then consider what is that connection? What is creating that path for you? And then what you've just said, Danielle, makes it an easier step
Well,
forward from there.
yes, and that's what I was going to say because a lot of people have these connections and not realizing it because it's even part in your magical practice. You may notice it. Sometimes your connection to an entity might be through that way. You might actually have a tulpa-like creature that's
Mhm.
connected to that spirit, but it's still a part of you. So you have your deep connection because that's where you get the connections where you feel the person, you can talk to the person, but it's also from a magical perspective. If you need to cast a spell for someone, there's your connection. You don't need to get whatever lock of hair and that. So you have the deepest connection you can get.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, you don't need all the fingernail clippings and whatever else. You
Mm.
don't need to do that, which is kind of nice. Um, yeah, no, that's amazing. And I am getting pressure right now, like pressure on my head telling me that our next topic now is
Hmm.
astral travel.
Yes.
And it goes actually with the topic we've just been talking about.
Yes.
It does, perhaps less obvious, but it does. And the thing with astral travel is if it's something you want to try, then be as prepared as you can, know that you're not prepared, right?
Yes.
Because it's not like anything else, and it can leave you shaken for a bit after the first time you do it. Excuse me.
Yep.
Not my
It's all
dogs.
right. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it can leave you quite shaken after you've traveled for the first time because you've got to unpack a lot of information about what just happened and what you did with that experience and so on. It can also become quite addictive. And I have a relative that he was in a care home because, advanced age in his 90s or no, approaching 90,
Mm.
and could not be looked after at home. And he spent so much time astral traveling that his partner, who would visit him there daily, said, you've seriously got to watch out what you're doing here. They're going to think you've passed.
Yeah.
Because when you're traveling, that's what you look like. You've kind of, your body is not moving because you're elsewhere. Um, and he did that a lot. And I suspect he did that right at the last moment too, because
Hmm.
this was something he was very fond of doing. It it can be like an addiction, or even it can be an addiction in that you can go anywhere. If you travel away from your body, you can literally be anywhere. You just have to want to be there, which kind of ties into how the whole tulpa thing works as well, right?
Right.
It's your it's your intention, it's your focus, it's your desire, but you can go anywhere. So astral travel it's an amazing thing to do. And I'm always going to say be careful before you start going, but
Right.
also you can't be fully prepared for that. And be aware that others are traveling too. So sometimes while you're out and about, shall we say, you meet others who are doing the same thing. So be prepared for that. You're not alone in that big universe. You're um, likely to come across others. It's a different
Right.
experience. So have I done it? Yes, that's why I can say what I can say. Um, I'm not addicted to it though, because from my experience, it takes a lot of energy and I would need to be still and focused a lot more than I am. So that's not my
Yeah.
path yet. I believe it
Mhm.
will be at some point, but it isn't yet.
Well, and this directly connects back to tulpas because instead of astral projecting, you can send a tulpa.
Right.
You can send a tulpa to collect
And
the
again,
information you want to get. Yeah. Or you can
you
send a
just
tulpa to
you
go
just
check
gotta
out those sites.
you just gotta pick your path carefully.
Yeah. It,
But
it
it does
seems
fit
like,
in, and thank you, because I had so much pressure on my head. It was like, if you try and squash a bike helmet on that's too
mhm.
small and it's pressuring your head, it felt like that. And it was just like, you have to say this.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Well,
There we are.
one of the big ideas of putting a tulpa out there, like such an advanced thing to do, is just how much or how valuable it is to a practice in the first place,
Mhm.
right? Other than like say communicating, not like verbally talking like a telephone, but the communication between people, the hybrid tulpa thing, construct is one thing, but sending it out also to travel for you to go pick up information for you is also part of it. And the fact that it can make casting certain spells easier, especially if you're casting it for someone that you have that connection with, right? Then you don't, then distance doesn't matter. Then all the little things you'd have to otherwise do don't matter because you're connected directly and it's there. And especially with the hybrid, there's usually a lot of spirits that work with you that are already directly involved in that creation in the first place. It would take two people really working together to create that hybrid under, like I said, for me, spirits create it and then they go, here's yours, and they give it to one to the other one. I'm the one usually aware of it, but it makes that communication easy. and it lets you know things ahead of time. It prepares you for when you have to do your work with that person. But I mean, you can look at it, right? If you're two people in a loving relationship, there's the most powerful bond you're going to get is having that hybrid entity.
That's true. Again, you need to be really sure that's what you want.
Right.
Like, because
Absolutely.
sometimes we convince ourselves of certain emotions or certain attachments that we don't actually have or don't need to have, but we think we ought to, so we convince ourselves. And this happens a lot more now in the time of instant gratification and so on.
Mhm.
And it's just like, well, I'm 16, I've got to be in love forever now. And
Right.
this kind of thing, I think that's always been around due to
Mhm.
hormones and whatever else. But
Right.
it's more, well, yeah, why do I have to wait for anything ever? Because it's the land of instant gratification. So, yeah, and by the land, I mean the planet, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody goes for this instant
Mhm.
gratification thing. So be mindful. Boy, I say this so much, but it's so important. Um, that you're not strengthening something that's not needing to be strengthened or wanting to be strengthened. Don't play in that arena until you're really sure that not only is that good for you, but also for them. It needs to be kind of balanced, right? Sometimes it isn't. I'm
Right.
not making that wrong. I'm just saying, don't lock yourself into something unless you're really, really sure that that's where you want to be.
Mhm. It's funny. I'm getting a non-committal idea of discussing the shadow side of this.
Shadow side's always good to discuss because people avoid it.
Well, so we'll go with this. When I finally realized what I was being taught and conditioned for, I was like, I started looking at other stories, and I would read stories of people who had obsessions with people unintentionally haunting someone,
Right?
and then finding out like a person that they were in love with was like having these really bad nightmares and stuff and experiences, and then finally figuring out is like that's me doing that. That's me having that shadow they're seeing all the time that's scaring them. That's me. That's my obsession manifesting. And I thought, oh, that's awesome. Like, great. I mean, I get it. Mine was always under control of something, but still, it was like the idea of because people would react to it, like those who could at least had a general awareness of like, what's this entity doing here? Or, why am I always feeling Danielle all the time? It was like,
Right.
well, I'm not doing this to you. This was created to facilitate communication. I didn't specifically make it. Obviously, I agreed to it in some level, anyways. But so did you.
Right.
But I didn't know enough to say that to someone at the time. And I don't think it would have helped.
Yeah, yeah. And by the way, thank you. Because again, I love the way this episode's flowing.
Mm,
It's just like this is beautiful right down a river there.
mm,
Um, lucid dreaming,
mm,
which is, you have these dreams that feel real, and you can tell by your heart rate when you wake up that, yep, I was there. I was in that thing. It's really vivid. And I've heard people say, you don't dream in color. I am very curious about those people because boy, I do. I get the color.
mm,
And lately I've had a lot of those very, very vivid dreams. Um, and lucid dreaming is something, what I wanted to say that ties in with what you were saying
mm,
is you can stop entities and people from coming into your dreams. You simply need to spell to them that they are not permitted to come into your dreams. You don't want their help. You don't want their hindrance. They cannot come to you. And you can do that nightly. You can do that for specific things. Like it's a whole realm to play with. But lucid dreaming is something you can work on developing. Mugwort, for example, is a great herb for this. You can
right.
put it under your pillow. You make tea from it if you can deal with drinking it. There are other things that you can bring in for lucid dreaming that don't involve pharmaceuticals.
Mhm.
Um, and you can work through a lot of stuff that way, but it's exhausting, or at least mine are. I wake up absolutely worn out from the night's adventures because I am doing all that running and jumping and switching from this location to that location and so on and so forth. But if there is an entity that's showing up and you don't want that entity there, or you want that entity to declare who they are to you,
Mhm.
you need to do a little spell work before you go to bed and have a plant that you're particularly fond of, that you kind of can talk to and get into that relationship with the plant. And yes, I'm not joking. Have that plant watching over you in the bedroom, when
Yeah.
or wherever it is that you sleep, like whatever your preferred location is.
Yeah.
And you do have a measure of control over that. You just have to remember to do it. But lucid
Yes.
dreaming is quite the adventure.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you said it, you kind of reinforced it again. Like we've been saying, especially for the last several episodes, this is a relationship, your magical practice.
Mhm.
And so it's your relationship with the spirits you work with, the forces you're working with, even the people you're working with. So you tend to them, you make sure they're reciprocal, and you set your boundaries.
And you have choice. That's the thing. You have choices. You don't have to have the visitations from entities that cause you distress. You may choose it if you're working through something, particularly if you're doing shadow work, but choose it. Don't let them choose you. That's a different thing. But remember, you always have choice. You don't have
Hmm.
to do X because X shows up.
Right. What's funny? So there's two things now the producers want to queue up for discussion. The first one was I was talking to Michaela about dreams I was having, or at least I had touched on them, and I said we might discuss them on the show. So now that Michaela's mentioned lucid dreaming, this is the cue. So one of the things I've been experiencing constantly in my dreams, and even some of it's bled over to my waking time, was okay, that's not the one we're talking about. All right, another dream. So this one in particular. So we've unlocked a lot of things, or unlocked, made things available in our spell casting this season. Theoretically, I don't really get access to any of that.
Okay.
But that is also a misunderstanding on my part that I'm also told. It's true, but it's true from a certain perspective. Because Michaela and I were discussing astral projection, which also ties into the discussion.
Hmm.
And I said, I can't astral project, or at least I'm not allowed to astral project. And Michaela kind of hit on it because I think you got the response of, I would abuse it or I would take advantage or something like that. I would overdo it.
I said you can do it, but there's a block, and if you remove that block, you'll become addicted to it.
Yes. Because as you might imagine, being trained over the years to be a conduit for magic, but having that conduit, that thing controlled, because like I said, right, I said, do what you need me to do. You can, I'll do whatever you need to do, right? So that puts me under a lot of, we'll say guidance,
Restriction?
restriction. So on the one hand, I've been developing over the years with restrictions, but yet building of my energy, my ability to channel energy, my ability to, I don't want to say generate, but my capacity keeps growing, but yet I can't play with it. There are things I can play with that keep me, we call it satisfied, but now we're opening stuff up and I'm still being restricted. But part of it is because I would just go whole hog. I'd be like that guy, that you mentioned. I'd be like, how come Dan looks dead all the time? Well, he's probably out astral projecting all the time or doing some stuff with
Hmm.
magic because, when we did my human design, right? I'm the hermit opportunist. So part of the hermit thing is to play with it, right? And I would, and I would play. But this is not a time for me to play because this is a time for me to share and not play. Even though I'm being introduced to new things, I can't play with them. These are new toys that I can't play with because I'll return, right, to my hermit cabin in the mountains and I'll cut off communication. But that's not what's needed right now. Even though right now I could be perfecting techniques and learning how to use things properly, it's something I have to stay away from. And it's a personality thing, right? My personality is not matching with what needs to be done right now. So it's like I'm being asked to work on the side of the sharing part, the opportunist part that right now isn't in ascension.
Yeah, because the two and the four, which is in your human design, and funnily enough, also mine, we have the
Mm,
same in that regard. Um, the four is where you share what you have
right,
to offer, and the wisdom that you know that you can't explain to others. This is where I got it from, or this is how I know it. I read it in this book. You and I don't work that way. We have that in
right.
common very much. That's
Mm-hmm.
not how it rolls. And if people insist on having, a textbook to explain it all or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, then good luck because we didn't get here from there. That's not the
Right,
path. But the other side to that learning, that's the two, and that's the hermit, and the other side is being called out of your cave and having to share it because
right,
you have to have that balance to remain healthy. And typically, the hermit doesn't like being called out of the cave,
right.
but it's important to be called out of the cave. We both have that. And it's honestly, it can be a pain in the ass, particularly if you're in hermit phase and you're getting hauled out of your cave. It's like kicking
Yeah,
and screaming, "No, leave me alone." Um, because you can spend all your life
yeah,
working and developing and doing things unseen, as you said, in your
right,
cave. But then what's the point if you don't get to share it? So we have that balance kind of forced on us.
yes.
And it's cool that we're in this sort of sharing space together. And then we both go
Mm-hmm.
off and hermit and then we come back and do the sharing thing. And sometimes, I'll be working on something, and you, Daniel, will message me and say, "Hey, are you doing a spell?"
Yeah.
And
Well, yeah.
typically, I'm either in preparation or yes, absolutely. Like today, it was, yeah, something you did coincided with exactly the
Mm,
timing for something I was working on.
yeah.
And then the other day, yeah, there was a big thing I was working on, big spell, and you had all kinds of responses to that and
Yes.
came asking me, like, are you doing something? So this is what you can do when you're working with someone, even if it's not directly in the same physical room or something. If you're working along the same path, you can find that you have those kind of connections coming up. And that's what's powerful about a coven too, is or
Right.
any gathering where you're all in the same mind. So that's why churches tend to have they have a lot of power, and I don't mean just the
Mm,
misogynistic rule wielding
right.
people at the top, but there is a sense that comes over you when you go into the church to do your communal prayers and so on, which is basically communal spelling. It's a coven in a building that's called a church. Basically the
Right.
same thing. You can put it anywhere. It could be in a
Mm,
synagogue, it could be in a temple, or it could be in a mosque. Same thing. Different scenario, different name, same thing.
yeah. Okay. So this brings me to the question of, since it was your turn to cast the spell, what was your spell?
It was for strength. It was for okay, how do I phrase this without repeating the spell? If you envisage a sort of, okay, a ripple that you would see in the water, only that ripple is like a shield that kind of moves around the globe,
Right.
covering everybody. And there was power in that, and there's strength in that, and there's resilience in that. and it's got like little tendrils, if you will, to reach out to the people who are seeking that connection and looking
Right.
for the ability and the strength to do everything that's needed right now, because it is now. It's not in
Mm,
2027 like human design had
right.
predicted. I mean, it's pretty close, right? 2 years is not bad.
Yeah.
In giving of times, time is not linear and it's not easy to predict. So I think 2025 is pretty close.
Well,
Um,
just as an aside, 2027 could still be the main event.
oh, it could. Yes, absolutely. So, and I don't discount that at all. In fact, I have kind of my mind's eye on it, because if that doesn't make you nervous, I don't know what will.
Mm.
Because damn, there's a lot going on right now. Um, yeah, that's kind of huge. So,
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say, because this is actually interesting, right? So again, there are certain gods who don't want to be named, not because they're bad or anything like that. They're just that's they don't want to be named. So while Michaela was getting ready to do her spell, yeah, because I started doing like these odd hand gestures. Every time my hands would relax, they would take certain gestures. I could do things if I had to do something, but my hand would go back once I was in a relaxed state to these hand gestures. And I sent Michaela a couple of pictures saying this is what my hands are doing. But even after that, the hand gestures started coming more frequently and started changing so that I stopped sending pictures to Michaela. But yeah, my hands just started doing gestures. This has happened before with us, but it's like, okay, so the first thing my hand did, most of you are going to recognize it as the Vulcan salute, but I think it has its origins in Judaism. If I remember, Leonard
yes,
Nimoy had to come up with something, so he took something from.
it's the Cohen blessing.
Uh, so that's the first thing that came. That's the first thing my hands did was that. That was the first one. Then my other hand, kind of the finger splayed. I don't know what that means in combination with that, but then there were some changes in finger positioning, and then there was after, like you would do a mudra where you touch certain fingers together to get the flow of energy going.
Yeah,
And then you
I
got
was going to say actually, looking up mudras would, because there's
yeah,
30 something common mudras, um, and I think there's more. But anyway, looking those up so that you can see the ones that I didn't get to see. But the Cohen blessing, yes, that's the Vulcan salute. And Spock, of course, was Jewish, so he knew the
yes.
Cohen blessing.
So yeah,
But
so my
yeah,
hand
so
started
this
doing that.
was the color of the spell was orange.
Okay.
The and it was very, very clearly orange.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was dragon strength, and then the dark mothers, plural,
Mm-hmm.
and their awakening.
Right.
So that was a lot.
Some of them are giving a thumbs up because they're part
It
of
was
the
a lot.
producers of the episode.
Yeah, and it comes from when you're doing something like that, it comes from a core, deep level um, that you just have to allow. Like it's not something you force, it's not something you create, I don't think. I think as far as my awareness goes, it's just something that you allow and it does it itself. It's a flow. So
Yeah.
that's about as much as I can explain of what I did. I'm not going to go into the specific details of the how, because as we've discussed before, it doesn't matter how I do it.
Right.
You would do it differently and somebody else would do it differently again. So that's not as useful as the listener might think.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because one of the reasons for asking, obviously, because we do one for the podcast, it's part of the ongoing project. But
Mhm.
another one is normally they tie into the episode too as well. So I'm trying to
Yes.
figure out how that ties into tulpas.
Well,
Or is the
there's
tulpa for next week or the next spell? But go
okay,
ahead.
so the visualization that I would
Mm-hmm.
like you to go with for the moment, if you can, is
All right.
the main color is orange and it spreads out, forms a circle around the entire planet. And then
Okay.
from this orange, if you think of sun flares, right? That's a pretty
Okay.
good example. Then you've got like flares that are reaching out for people who want to be connected to that energy, to that power. So that's like a web of connectedness.
Right. Now I
Okay,
see the
Daniel is
connection.
gesturing in such a way that suggests that just landed.
Yeah. Well, now I see the tulpa part because part of part of the trickster, my trickster teacher, part of its technique to have a strong connection with me was to create the tulpa connection, the hybrid tulpa connection. And so this is probably what tulpa thing's about is to best absorb what Michaela did. A tulpa will be your connection to it, or a that tulpa hybrid, part you, part that energy
Mhm.
is
There are
probably
like connection cords,
yeah,
those flares as I compared it to, which wasn't how I saw it originally, but it kind of
mm,
works. It's like a bunch of extension cords coming out
right,
from there, and you can kind of plug into that. You can connect to
yeah.
that, and it's there whether you choose it or not, but it's available, and that's something that I
Yes.
think has heightened.
So that's okay. Yes. So that's why the discussion of the hybrid tulpa, because that's really what they wanted to get to was the hybrid. That was when they wanted to discuss tulpas, because they were like, you're talking about, even though you don't want to talk about the tulpa thing, the hybrids, you're going to talk about it because it's important. So this is it, right? So a lot of you, you're in for an interesting future for the next what's coming because you're going to have a hybrid tulpa, hybrid with the energy that was released with Michaela's spell and going forward to your connections with spirits is what I'm
It's right there.
understanding.
Yeah, no, it's right there. It's available. You can literally reach out and touch it.
Yeah. So your tulpa is going to be your connection. Okay. So here's what I'm getting. That's your initial connection until you learn to assimilate it, not assimilate to it. Like you know what I mean. I keep thinking Star Trek, the Borg, you'll be assimilated. No, until you become conditioned to be able to connect directly. So yes. So if it feels like there's someone else with you in a room for like a little while, it's because you got a tulpa connection, a
I'd
hybrid
love to
tulpa.
hear about it actually. If anybody has that experience, I'd love to hear what it is they do experience and how it
Mm,
works for them. Because there is, so here's something that I'm getting that I need to explain is
okay.
with this orange energy, this
Mm,
sun, if you will. Again, that's not how I saw it, but that's what I'm getting to explain it. Um, it's not good or bad. It's not positive or negative. It's just powerful. And
right.
what you do with it is up to you. And again, that repercussion of if you create a
Mm,
tulpa and it goes and does stuff, it will come back to you. That fits right here. That is exactly this. If you use that connection and you take it in a negative direction to cause harm to someone, then be prepared for that to come back. And I'm not doing the Wiccan sort of
mm,
threefold law or the karmic thing. It's not karma means law of action, right? If
right.
you do X, Y happens because that's how it goes. So, yes, in that regard, in the true regard of karma being the law of action and doing, whatever you do has an action. It has
Right.
a response, a result. So, in that regard, yes, it's karmic, but it's not like, oh, well, if you do a bad thing, bad things will happen to you. That's a little too generic and it's not
Yeah.
it's almost there, but it's not quite.
Mm,
But if you take an aspirin for a headache, chances are the headache will go away. So the action you did had a result. If you feed somebody poison, chances are they'll throw up or they'll die. Well, that
mhm,
had a result. Now there are
right.
consequences of that result. And you will be in line for those consequences. So it's a natural law. It's not, hokey pokey. If you belong to this group, then believe that. This is simply natural consequences.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Once you do something, there's an effect on the environment.
Exactly. And how far that goes depends on what you're doing, right? We have somebody right now who's in power in the US whose actions are having massive, stunning repercussions all around the planet. So one person can make that much of a difference, whether it's mentally, physically, or spiritually.
Hmm.
There is an awful lot that you can do. So be aware of that and choose wisely.
Yeah, this is interesting. Like just the whole thing, because I had no idea. I was given the topic, and like I pretty
Mhm.
much, I think I told Michaela the next day, and that was like early on during the week. And I thought, wow, I'm gonna have like a whole week of research, right? Because they're telling me this so early, and they're like so excited about it, and it was like, you're not doing nothing. Now just go about your life. I'm like, wait, hold on. You can't tell me do tulpas and then not
Well,
have me jump into research or at least, do some training with me or something like just to, nope, tulpas is what you're doing. Just let it marinate and go.
yeah, and I think all the topics that have come in that attach to that,
Hmm.
like I love the flow of how things have gone today because it is like literally a stream of consciousness, but also consequence. Like it just you go here, it flows to there, which flows to there, and it just keeps on rolling. And it's all pertinent to where we are as a species right now. Not next
I like
week,
that though.
not
Stream
next
of
month,
consciousness and stream
right
of
now.
consequence.
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's
I do a lot of river metaphors, particularly when I'm doing human design, because it's the best example you can visualize for flow, right? Like air flows, but it's kind of hard to visualize that. Whereas a river, it's a lot easier.
hmm.
So yeah, flow of consequence, flow of consciousness. Both of them are unstoppable, really. It's a question of whether you allow them or block them, which takes us kind of back to astral travel, right? And whether you allow it or you block it, or you allow the
Right.
block to be there. Whether you put it there or something or someone else put it there, you
Yeah.
allow the
Well, when
block
you
to be
mentioned it,
there
right?
or it won't be there.
Yeah. Actually, this discussion on astral projection, I ended up starting because I was telling Michaela, whatever she's doing, like all the energy was going to her. The God I had with the God who had showed up was now going to go to her place. And if I was not blocked from astral projection, I would have went too. And I felt it like because I could feel myself, but I'm always locked at the ajna.
Mm.
That's where it stops. Like everything else comes out, I can feel myself, but it's always locked in at the ajna. So, but I would have
At
showed up.
some point, you're
What's
going to
that?
unblock that.
Yeah.
At some point, you will.
Well, like I said, right, I like even it was funny. It's not like the first time we haven't mentioned an anime or anything like that on this show. But I was watching a new anime yesterday. Actually, there was two things that were interesting. One was one is actually Tulpa related, but specifically for this, for those of you familiar with My Hero Academia, you know that so it's a world of superhumans and they have their powers are called quirks. Well, the one character had a quirk called Slide and Glide. And I'm currently, like, for the last dozen or so years, a big fan of useless superpowers. What can you do with them? And when I'm bored, I'll just start thinking, oh, well, someone mentioned a useless superpower. What can you do with it? And slide and glide is basically the way it was described was it's almost akin to flying along the ground, but like you're sliding, but he has propulsion with it. And he can go up buildings and stuff like that. But his maximum speed is like that of a bicycle. So he's not like in that world, he wouldn't have qualified to be a superhero, but he still wanted to fight crime. So and I was thinking like, it kind of lit up my mind. It's like, okay, what are the possibilities of this? This is like basically ground level flight as long as he has 3 points of contact on the ground. So it looks really funny too, because he's like, on all fours moving along the ground. But and my brain goes into those things. Like even someone had put like, okay, here's a useless power flying, but you can only have 3 inches of elevate, but you can only have an altitude of 3 inches. And I thought to myself, well, okay. then don't worry about it as actually being a flight power, but think of it as having propulsion. Even if you can't get higher than 3 inches, oh my God, okay, my brain's gonna go like a million places. But
So
you know
it's
what?
like a
If you have,
hovercraft.
yes, that's one of the first things I thought of. But then because I've had this discussion with people before about this topic, and they're like, well, no, no, you can only go 3 inches off the ground. But I'm like, okay, but what's 3 inches off the ground? Like typically when you see superhero stuff, it's like the center of mass is usually the center of elevation. So you might have your like chest and off the ground 3 inches, but your limbs be dragging on the ground. I thought, okay, well, if that's the case, and that's worst case scenario, you can still get on a skateboard or put on rollerblades or sit on a bicycle or whatever. And if nothing else, you can fly through the water, right? But then I thought, but what if 3 inches is just the lowest part of you? Now you can do impressive things like just glide across the ground, like, wear big robes so you can't see your feet, and then you just kind of move along the ground. But if that's the case, then you never have to worry about falling. So there's all these side effects, all these incidentals that my brain keeps looking at. What are the what are the consequences, the river of consequences? What are the outer effects, the secondary effects? Then, because that's what you start looking at. If you could fly to any elevation, you wouldn't think past that. But once you have a limitation like that, oh well, what are the secondary effects of the ability? I won't fall to the ground and hurt myself, even if your center of mass is the point of elevation. You stop before you hit 3 inches, right? By 3 inches, and you can go across water on certain footing. Like it's just that kind of thing, right? The brain starts going, okay, which is also again probably why I don't astral project. It's like you're gonna go look at all the ridiculous things we haven't intended, and
Uh-huh. Well, it does require a certain mental state to be able to do it in the first place. But it is one of those things that once you've done it, you know how to do it and you can keep doing it if you so choose. But, again, it can be kind of tiring. It depends on what you're doing and where you're going, I think, and what you encounter. If you are having any issues with somebody doing shadow work and they are
Mhm.
coming for you in some way, then that is exhausting. That is problematic. And you may need to bring somebody else in to help you, but that's a whole other story. Um, yeah. But having a scattered attention
Yeah,
probably actually wouldn't get very far with the astral travel simply because you have to have a destination in mind. You got to have a point to it. And if there's too many, then there's not enough energy, if you will, to get you there.
right.
So I think you'd be safe in that regard, but you've got to be careful which one you land on.
Yeah,
Which one's going to be uppermost today? Whoops. Could be good, could be not.
yeah, yeah. That's so for the listeners, right? That's another part of it is again the reminder of your focus, your intention, and now things are going to be easier to do
Reach out
because
and touch that.
you, yeah,
Reach out and touch
'cause-
that focus, that power. It's there.
yeah. I mean, part of the spells, well, the whole point of the spells we cast was to release resources
Mhm.
and make resources available. So some things you might have been struggling with, you may not be struggling with anymore, and new things might be opened up to you.
Oh, new things will open up. Yes.
Yeah,
The deal here is you need to be available, like open
yeah,
to seeing what's possible rather than focusing on what's not possible. If you turn your attention to, well, what can I do, or where am I, or what is working, whatever the thing is you need to shift your focus on, that's where you'll find the opportunities right there. They're just sitting there looking at you, waiting for you to see them. So it's available. And the thing with this kind of work too is it means that it's out there for everybody. It's not,
mhm,
okay, only these specific people who I agree with can have
right,
access. It's like, no, no, this is widely, completely, fully available for everybody, whether that's a good thing or not. And I'm counting on more benefit than negativity coming from it, but I have no control over that.
Well,
And
yeah,
sometimes
that's
you
the
got to
thing.
take those risks, right? You have to take
Yeah.
those risks.
And that was the quote. I'll word it this way. That was the promise at the beginning of casting these spells, was that we're not gatekeeping anyone. This is for everyone who needs to use them to use them. So whether we agree or disagree, like I stressed with the one with the, dragon and angel magic is protected. Doesn't matter if I agree with the caster or the dragon or angel they're with, it's protected. There's no, our biases are not in the way here. You are free to
And
use.
and nor can they be because we don't know enough as people
Yeah,
on the physical plane. We cannot know enough to make those calls. That's
right.
not for us to know who is going to do good things with it, who's not, and what that actually means. Um, and like a coaching tool that I use
Mm,
from the life coach school,
right.
called the model, it basically works like this. The event or the circumstance is neutral. So it's something anybody in the world could look at and say, yep, that is a cup of coffee. I see that. That's a cup of coffee. Now, it means nothing. It's neutral. And that's where we're at with this energy right now. Is it's hot, it's powerful, like a good cup of coffee would be,
Mm,
only much, much more so. But what happens to it from there depends on how you think about it. So if you look at that coffee and you think, oh my God, if I drink that, I'm not going to sleep for a week,
mm,
then your thoughts about that are not very positive. If you think, oh, that smells so good and I'm going to drink that right now, that's a different thing. However, you think about that neutral event or that neutral circumstance
mm,
will give rise to the feelings you have about it. So, ew, coffee, yuck, I think I'm going to go throw up, and you get
mm,
all negative and I'm going to throw it down the sink and waste, I don't know, $20 at Starbucks or whatever it is.
right.
But I don't buy coffee, I make my own. But, your action is going to come from how you feel about that thing. And the results you get will be based on your action. So, the place where the power is to think differently about that neutral event or circumstance. So, if you have a problem that's blocking you, or you have a negative perspective, um, this always sucks, this never works, you're using those always, never, those absolutes. Um, and it's a source of distress for you, then that's the thing to turn and look at and say, okay, how can I think of this differently? Because as soon as you start doing that, you become available to all the information that's out there that you didn't
Mm,
see or access. So that you might want to play that over again if you're listening to the podcast, but that in a hurry is the process of taking your power, which is deciding how and what you want to think about something. Another
mm,
quick example is I could say, this person is dead. And anybody in the world could look at them and say, yep, they're dead. That is a thing. That person is dead. Okay, so that's actually neutral.
mhm,
Now, often people will say, well, no, it's not. It's horrible. Somebody's dead. So, well, it depends, doesn't it? If you're a Buddhist monk and you are working on understanding impermanence,
mhm,
then not at all. This is not bad because you know that the body is impermanent. If you're a spiritual person, you're going to have different take on that. If you were related to that person, or if you hated that person, or you've never even heard of that person before, all of these things give you different perspectives. So how you think about that dead body now changes, right?
mhm,
Depending on how you perceive that event to have been. Was it bad for you? Was it good for you? And then that affects how you feel about it, which affects what you're going to do about it. And that gives you your results. So, again, the place where you have power is to change how you think about something. And that's like the biggest
yeah,
gift I can give anybody verbally is to understand that. Because once you get that, you have a starting place to change everything.
right. and it'll help any tulpa that manifest around you.
Yeah, and you can help other people with this too. And please understand me. This is not a Pollyanna thing. This is not, oh, the sun will come out tomorrow. Like, oh, good
Mm.
Lord. Toxic positivity is one of the worst things of our time. It's obnoxious. It's, I have a lot of judgment about it. I'm not at all happy with toxic positivity, and it pisses me
Mm.
off when I hear about it. And if somebody tries it on me, they don't try it twice because I
Right.
won't have it. So I don't mean that. It's a process sometimes. Like I recently had a situation with a workplace that was extremely stressful because somebody was out to cause me a lot of problems. And it got to a point where it was so bad, I literally hit breaking point. And at that pivotal moment, I got to a place of non-attachment. Finally. Oh, you
Mm.
can't always do that when you want to, you know? Sometimes it's a process and it's never fun. But I got to that place of non-attachment. So by the time I got to this crucial meeting between some important people at this workplace, um, I went in to use the common vernacular, not giving a fuck about the
Mm.
outcome. I didn't care. I still don't. It can go however they choose. I care not. But what that did for me was it meant I could be available, aware, and open to the present moment to deal with all the knives that were thrown my way. I was able to hold up a mirror and deflect them with that mirror. So the truth could be seen and the knives didn't hit home. And I get that that's a lot of visualization, but it's as much of the
Right.
story as I can put out there. Um, but it made such a difference. And the thing is, I didn't get rattled. I didn't have to grit my teeth or, anything. I didn't have to do anything because I had no attachment to what the outcome was like. I was simply not going to take anybody's lies and let them be. So that's a process of changing my perspective. It was a very painful process, but it was a process of changing my perspective and being open to, well, where can this go? What will this do? I'm not attached to the outcome. It can go wherever it needs to go. If I don't have a job, fine. If I have a job, fine. I don't care either way. It's
Yeah.
very powerful when it kicks in, when you can do it.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? I'm trying to think of the name properly. So if I get this wrong, I apologize. Musashi Masamuro, I think was the name of the guy. And that was his philosophy. You should go into that. You should go into battle expecting to die.
Right.
And then you can do whatever, because once you expect that, then you'll do whatever you need to do. And that fear won't be in your way.
That's the thing. Okay, that you just took a rather large nail and went whack, 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 whack,
Mhm.
whack, straight on the head, because that's exactly the point. When you get to non-attachment for the outcome, which you do by changing your perspective,
Mhm.
that literally takes the power away from it, and the power is fed by fear.
Right.
I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. I'm afraid I'm going to look bad. I'm afraid this thing's going to happen. That thing could happen. But what if, what if, what if? And what if is absolutely the sort of little pathway lights that send you down the spiral of fear, right? It's the spiral of doom. What if, what if, what if? What if is never ending, right? You get caught in that
Mhm.
stream and you need to jump out onto the side there because that's just going to keep going. There's no end to those. But when you can change your perspective and literally the outcome is like, I don't care. You can fire me if you want. Do that thing. Nothing else matters. Literally, you are out of that stream. You are sitting on the bank, picking daisies, and generally feeling perfectly fine. And everybody else, you can see it more clearly too. You can see where other people are going with their master plan, if you will. And the person who particularly got it in for me, and boy, did she, excuse me a sec, the person who got it in for me was so unaware because she was so focused on the outcome that even when things weren't working out how she thought they were going to, she kept going. She kept pushing, making it worse. Not for me, but for her aim. She was digging the trench deeper and deeper. And I didn't have to do a thing. I just, deflection, not deflection even, but a mirror.
Right.
Like
A
I have nothing to
reflection.
hide here. I'm going to reflect it straight back at you. And that shift was possible because of the non-attachment. Otherwise, we'd have both been stuck in the same story, slugging it out, right? And neither of us would have seen a bigger picture. Whereas I was able to step out of that and just, go for it. Do what you want to do. It's fine. It's not going to land. So that's the power that's available to you now is to change your perspective. The listener, Danielle, me,
Mhm.
everybody, change your perspective. What do you want? What are you looking for? What are you open to? Because it's there.
Absolutely. Like that point right now, that is so important. It's there. All the times we've been telling you, be yourself, love yourself, because that's what's going to let you draw that in, or that's what's going to make you available to it. That's it. Like it's literally that simple. And because it's that
It
simple,
is.
right? It's going to be like infinitely complex because you're going to try to adapt to the simplicity.
Well, as humans, we also like to make things complicated. We're kind of taught from early, unfortunately, that things are complicated. So, in human design, one of the questions I will ask someone I'm working with is, can you think of something that you do or you work with somehow that's effortless? It's so simple, you can't even imagine that everybody else doesn't do it too. Is there something? And there always is. Everybody has something. Well, that simple thing, if I then sit and listen to that person's language, they're going to say, well, it's not a big deal. I mean, yeah, I've always been able to do that. It's nothing. Everybody can do that, it's nothing, and they minimize, minimize, minimize until the poor thing becomes microscopic. And yet, that's that is you in flow. That is
Hmm.
correct for your human design. It is a keyhole, if you will. And if you look through that keyhole, you'll see that there's a whole load of other things that are actually sitting there waiting for you to tap into. And you will have this at least one example of something that's so easy. But because it's easy for you, it's not complicated enough. It can't be worth anything. I didn't have to struggle. It can't be good. I didn't have to battle for it. And that's not true. Sometimes when you let go of the struggle, you let go of the need to battle,
Right.
that's when you get the gift. That's when you get the ease, the thing that's coming to you. But if you keep struggling, you keep it out of the way.
Mm. You know what? I don't know how this ties in, but like I said, I don't really recognize all the gods that are and goddesses that are lining up to produce the show right now because they're all their metaphor, their we call it their sphere of influence is magic. So there is I'm crossed between stuck that she's either Hindi or she's Mayan. But anyways, she wants me to bring up dancing. So if words are spells, what is singing? Well, if rituals are rituals, then what is dancing? Rituals are magic, what is dancing?
Well, dancing, think of whirling dervishes. That's the first thing
Right,
that comes to mind. So it can be a means to get yourself into a trance-like state.
right. So I'm
And
thinking singing and dancing. Yes.
that's a powerful path.
Well, because and dancing is used in magic, and I think about possessions in voodoo. There's a lot of dancing involved, at least from my perspective of it.
It's non-verbal language.
Right. Yes. And now my head is filled with pictures of people dancing in colorful dresses. women,
Uh-huh.
and rituals and ceremonies, and yeah. So dancing is so. I'm trying to think. So everything is connected so far in this episode.
Yep.
Every time we've broken from something, it's been connected. Like, tulpas, singing as a way to deal with tulpas. So dancing is in here too with a way to enhance your magic. I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for.
To connect to it.
Yes. Well, that's the thing, right? Like, so if I say like enhance, I'm not saying a surplus will come to you. What I'm saying is you will have a surplus of engagement, I guess, in this case,
Okay.
right? Because I've said it, and we've talked about this idea on the podcast before. The more sensory immersion you have, the more your resources are at play, and therefore the more connected the experience, the pure, if you want to use that word, the experience is. So singing and dancing when you're doing magic, yeah,
Oh, it's
this
huge.
is being
Think of
suggested. Singing and dancing
think
is being
of
suggested to add to people's practices.
think of rituals that happen around a fire, for example. People aren't sitting there talking.
Right.
They're up, moving, maybe swaying, maybe dancing, maybe they are traversing, moving around in a circle or something. Typically it's a circle, that's kind of the shape of the fire. Um, but dancing features, and I think dancing is a way to connect your whole self
Yes.
to the spiritual realm that you're working with. I can't swear that that's accurate, but this is what comes to me that it is. And, it's a funny thing, but in coaching in the mundane world,
Hmm.
one of the things I tell people who struggle with anxiety and depression, not to a level that they need meds, but to a level that makes them wake up miserable, that kind of level, a little gear, is get up and dance to music on that you like, that resonates for you,
Yes.
and dance because it improves your breathing, it improves your blood circulation, and it does enhance your mood. It lifts you up. And when you are up, you can see better. You can connect better. Your perspective can shift. So dancing, I had this woman who was in her 80s who, she had a long litany
Hmm.
of complaints about stuff. And I she was interested in coaching, kind of, sort of, but not fully. And so I said, well, let me just give you this freebie, which is dance in the mornings when you wake up, because she
Hmm.
felt very lonely. She's living on her own,
Right.
um, didn't have connection with anybody. And so I suggested she find some music that she really loves and just dance around like nobody's watching, because, hey, they aren't. And she, next time I saw her, she was quite chipper and said, yeah, that helped a lot. I like it. So it can work on a mundane level in all kinds of great ways. So imagine what it does on the spiritual level. And if you're
Yeah.
combining dancing and singing,
Yeah. So I got it. The whole point is immersion. It's absolutely, I know maybe I just said that a few minutes ago, but that's definitely it. It's immersion. The more you can immerse yourself, be it creating a tulpa, be it task to project, to really get into your magic, immerse yourself as much as possible. Yeah. Get yourself in there, put your doubts and all that stuff aside, and just be in there purely in the moment when you're doing your magic. That is the message. That's how it all ties together. You have to immerse yourself to do a tulpa. You have to immerse yourself to astral project. You have to immerse yourself to sing and dance with any kind of quality. So,
and all of them require a voluntary abandonment of fear.
yes,
You can't take fear in those places
I'll share a story actually.
because it'll stop
So,
you.
I'm at my sister's, right? And we've got in the habit of doing karaoke. although it had been on the lull lately. But I ended up doing the song "Ain't No Love in Oklahoma" by Luke whatever Combs, whatever. But I like it because it had that I don't know what to call it, that southern growl, that southern but it had that folklore, of like because one of the lyrics is I keep chasing that same old devil down the same old dead end highway.
Okay.
And I like that kind of imagery and stuff like that, right? But I decided because the song has a lot of that energy into it, I actually sang it that way instead of just trying to sing my normal way. And I actually had a lot of success at it. But I let myself go completely into the song and really do the growliness, which I didn't think I could really do. To me, it always kind of hurt, but it felt fine when I really threw myself into it.
Do
So,
you know, I think the big thing from
mm,
today, and there can be more than one big thing, ladies and
mm,
gentlemen, but the big thing for me is fear. You got to see it and decide not to carry it with you when
right,
you're, well, whenever you're changing your perspective, you need to do it from a place that's not fear-based, right? We do so much from a place of fear, and it's on the occasions when you can let the fear go.
right,
And fear is usually tied to an outcome, right? It's the
yeah,
non-attachment thing. I'm afraid of how this is going to end up. What happens if da da da? All of those things, that's the language of fear. Now we have a level of fear always
mhm,
because that's the basis for awareness and that's what keeps us alive. That's what kept us alive when there were saber-toothed tigers around.
right,
But it should not be the place where you make your decisions, nor does it have any place coming into your magical practice. Either do it or don't, but don't do it afraid. Let the fear be away from you somewhere. Um, yeah, fear doesn't work with these things.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because we did an episode on fear, and I remember sharing the idea from a cartoon that, for people who remember the Super Friends cartoon from a long, long, long time ago, when the character Apache Chief got his powers, he was denied constantly getting the power because he wanted it, but he wanted it because he was afraid. And the shaman who was going to give it to him says, like, the minute you acquire power in fear, fear will always govern your power.
Exactly. That's great. Yeah, that's precisely it. If you make decisions from fear, then that's the outcome you'll get. It'll be tainted by that.
Right.
And it'll be a lower level than you can achieve without the fear. And people know, like you don't have to tell them, I don't have fear in this situation, like sound a little odd anyway, but you
Mm-hmm.
know someone who that you've seen them do something or you're aware of a thing they've done and you've sort of looked and said, wow, that was chutzpah. I love that. Wow, look at that person go. You admire that in them. Well, that thing that you're admiring in that person is them being able to put down, aside, or let go of, even better, the fear.
Right.
And you'll know when you've done it, right? Like you can't pretend your way out of it. And that recent experience that I described
Mm-hmm.
was phenomenal for me to sort of get a reschooling, if you will, in the whole thing, because it was like, oh yeah, now I've reached this stage where actually I have no attachment. It felt so good. So nice because and there was no negativity there, like no ill will, no attachment, like I don't care how the outcome goes, and that's the freest you can ever feel, I think. So
Yeah.
that's where you need to be at for your best outcomes, whether they're mundane and certainly when they're spiritual. So if
Yeah.
you're working magic and you bring fear into the equation, not so good. It's a muddy lake
Yeah.
as opposed to a nice clear river, you know? Might not want to paddle in the muddy lake.
Yeah. That kind of makes me think, right? The kind of emotion you want to have in your practice is probably the emotion you should come to your practice with. So if you want to be afraid every time you do anything, then come to your magic with fear. If you want to have a happy and exciting and loving practice, and bring love to your practice. That was the word that was actually being pushed on me, but I
Mhm.
accept it. I
Sure.
mean,
Well,
it's what I've
that's
tried to do with mine. So yeah,
mhm.
you know what? I think that's the final word on this one.
Sounds good.
Do it with love. I, I want to recap, but listen to the episode again. It seems to me the producers are telling me if you want to recap, re-listen. Re-listen, take notes because this is a big one. This hit a big topic that connected all the very big thing that's happening right now in terms of how the spiritual is mixing with the material. Yeah, it's like I'll explain this. So how it feels right now, there's a heavy weight, and once we finish this episode, the weight will be gone. At least for us doing the episode. I don't know what it's going to be for everyone else, but this is how it feels right now. So it's like this one last message of just, for the most part, for those of you listening, because you're probably listening to us because you're coming from the camp of doing it out of love. So do it out of love. Let that be
Yeah.
your motivator.
Yeah.
When you should inevitably your tulpa, this hybrid tulpa show up because you're going to connect to whatever what Michaela did, let it be in love.
Yeah. And you'll know because you'll know the feeling.
Mhm. Yeah. Let it be in love. And once again, I'm Daniel Dubois.
I'm Michaela Gaffinstone.
Until next time.
Till next time.